Hello, and welcome to the Global BIM Network's first General Assembly meeting. My name is Alana Gluck, and I am the delivery lead for the Global BIM Network Secretariat. I'm delighted to be your host for today's event, which will be held in English, Spanish, French, and Japanese. You should see at the bottom of your screen the option to select the language preference. 9 months ago, on March 17th, more than 2,000 built environment professionals from over 90 countries across the world joined us for the Global BIM Summit. At the summit, we launched the Global BIM Network and a shared vision for a global digital built environment that delivers benefits for people and places. Today, we are convening members from across the public sector and multilateral institutions to take the next step towards achieving that shared vision by launching the Global BIM Network's roadmap, setting out the journey which we will travel together for the next 4 years. In addition to launching the roadmap, today we will hold 3 knowledge exchange panel discussions. In these panel discussions, you will hear from members and member institutions of the Global BIM Network who are leading digital built environment initiatives across the world. We will learn about the national policies, programs, and people who are at the heart of driving digital transformation in their countries and organizations. The panel discussions will also provide a living example of the knowledge artifacts that the network is seeking to include in its free open access knowledge base on our website, www.globalbim.org. We also hope to hear from you, the General Assembly, during today's event. We will be running a number of audience polls on the Slido application using the event code Global BIM Network as it appears on my screen. If you've joined us before for the Global BIM Summit, please let us know now through the Slido poll. You may also use the Zoom chat feature to provide your thoughts, questions, and insights during today's sessions. We do hope that you will take part and share your perspective with us. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Adam Matthews, Chair of the Global BIM Network Steering Committee, who will provide us with an update on network activities to date. Adam, if you'll kindly join us by turning your camera on, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Alana. Hello, everybody, and great to see you join us today. I've just been looking in the chat, and we have, I think, people from South Africa, Singapore, the UK, of course, as well, and various other places. So great to have you with us today. Digitalization of the construction sector is estimated to create savings of around $250 billion a year. Clearly, this is an important topic for the whole industry. And by industry, I mean academia, public sector, private sector, standards bodies, and other associations and professional bodies as well. With that target that we have of generating those savings, we've also got some highly significant national and global goals, such as, of course, on the back of COP26 very recently, net zero targets, climate resiliency targets, ensuring that the places are fit for purpose for the whole life cycle of those particular environments. The global network has a vision, and its vision is really quite simple, which is how can we collaborate primarily from a public sector perspective, but together collectively with the private sector to advance the sector towards this digital realization. In a sector that's worth 13% of global GDP, it's going to be crucial that we collaborate in order to achieve that digital transformation that we're trying to drive, but also so that we can collectively all benefit from that environment. There are going to be challenges on the way. There have been challenges along the way, of course, and that's really what the Global BIM Network is all about. The Global BIM Network brings together the public sector with multilateral organizations to accelerate this digital transformation. So why do we call this the General Assembly? Well, it's really to provide a place where we can all have a collective conversation between the public sector, with the private sector, with academia, and also with standards bodies and professional institutions and industry groups as well. So we're going to open up another Slido at this point. There's a link there in the chat as well to the Slido login details, and it's also on my screen. There you go. If you go there and just let us know where you're from, which particular sector you're from, rather, so public sector, private sector, academia, or a professional industry body. Our goal ultimately is to increase the skills and expertise of the public sector when introducing building information modeling and information management into public infrastructure projects and programs. So how are we going to do this? Well, in this session, in this first session, I'm going to briefly describe what we've been doing so far since our launch that Alana just mentioned in March. We've been busy on a couple of things, and I'm going to go through that summary with you now. I'm going to also present the roadmap. The roadmap has been a really big focus of the Global Network, which defines how we're going to collaborate together as a global community of the public sector and multilateral organizations as well. We're also going to have in this session a brief conversation with two of my colleagues, members in the steering committee from Vietnam and from the Czech Republic, and I'll be pleased to introduce them in a moment as well. So do remember to have a look at the Slido and let us know where you're from. I'm going to now share with you that summary that I described, a summary of what we've been working on. Before I do that, I'd like to just go back in time, first of all, not very far, only to 2010, 2015, and look at what was going on with these national initiatives, these BIM programs to transform the sector and to advance the benefits for both public sector and private sector. In that period, there were relatively few clustered in North Europe, of course, the UK and Singapore at around 2011, 2012, issued their national BIM programs. The US had a large public client program as well. The GSA, I believe, was the first. So this wasn't long ago, back in 2015 time. In 6 short years since then, we've seen a tremendous change. We've seen a huge amount of growth in these government industry activities to drive the digital agenda across Europe, Latin America, incredibly across Latin America as well, and in parts of Asia and other parts of the world as well, as you can see here. I should say, this isn't perfect. It isn't perfectly accurate, this map. And if you do have some more information about this, then let us know, get in touch with us, and there'll be links in the chat to get in touch with us. And also we're going to be talking about the call for knowledge, which will be another area where we'd really love you to get involved and provide us some ideas as to what's happening in your part of the world. So this is the beginning of the Global BIM Network, this increase of activity, especially on the public sector side, really led us to the thought that we should collectively bring all of this together, bring that learning together from over that past 5-10 years, and think about how we can all benefit and move the sector forward. So this is our vision. What have we been working on? Well, first of all, again, as Alana said, we launched in March. We had around 2,000 attendees, 90 countries were participating in that. We have an advisory board for the Global BIM Network, which is primarily comprised of multilateral organizations, the Inter-American Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, and United Nations Ops Team. We also have a steering committee. This is primarily country level, national level representatives from Europe, Latin America, Asia, and North America as well, of course. and most recently, and I'd like to welcome in here Japan and Australia as our newest members. I mentioned the roadmap. We're going to talk about the roadmap in a moment, which has been a really large focus of our activity. But also another activity we've been focusing on is the Global BIM Network knowledge base. I'm going to talk about this now. This knowledge base is responding to a question. The question is, what is it that the public sector can learn and be informed by with regards to the different approaches of how BIM has been introduced and information management has been introduced into public policy, into public procurement practices, and ultimately into projects. So that's what the global knowledge base is all about. You can take a look at it on the website, and we'd encourage you to have a look. It's structured in this way: national level, procurement organization level, and project level. It currently has a small set of documents, of what we call knowledge artifacts, grouped into these 4 information collections: public leadership, a collaborative framework, meaning the documentation, the guides, the tools, communication and communities. That's all about people and how we've gone about introducing and being inclusive of a diverse range of people in this transformation. And finally, capability and capacity building. So how are we getting this to scale in our country? How are we moving from 1 to 5 to 50 projects to 100 to 1,000 projects so that we can achieve those benefits? Again, have a look at the website there. Please do. And this is where we'd like to ask you to get involved. We've issued a call for knowledge globally. There's links here. There'll be links in the chat as well, which is really to say that we want to grow this this knowledge base with your information, with documents that can be publicly shared. There are certain criteria, and that's on the website as well. So the public, they need to be publicly available. They need to be freely available. You know, no charges and that sort of thing. They've got to be valuable and useful, and written in a neutral way as well. So we'd really like you to contribute to that, and we'll be talking about this later on in the session. I mentioned it before as well, that one of the big areas we've been working on is the roadmap. Why do we have a roadmap? Well, we wanted a roadmap because we want to understand what our goal is over a relatively short period of time, 3 to 4 years, for example. And we wanted to think about what are the types of activities that we need to collectively work on. And this is what this roadmap lays out. And I'm going to talk about it with you right now. If there are any thoughts that you have, of course, feel free to use the chat, but also feel free to get in touch with us at the email that will be provided in the chat as well, the international@cwb.cam.ac.uk. So how does this work? Well, first of all, just to explain the layout of the roadmap. First of all, we're heading to the top right corner. This is called a sunray diagram. All of the lines head towards that sun in the top right corner. The goal is, as I said, to increase the global public sector's digital capabilities and capacity. How can the public sector be a strong ally and partner to the global construction industry? As I'm sure you'll appreciate, a highly diverse and important industry, but how can we work together? We have 3 phases along the top: the discovery phase, a development phase, and finally a delivery phase, which is about scale and delivering impact from what we produce. The 4 lines of activity here, I'm going to just highlight those individually. First of all, the leadership line of activity is really about building a coalition of the public sector in the steering committee of the global network. It's about identifying things that we can do, that we can help with to provide support to that wider industry transformation. Community communications, people are at the heart of digital transformation. We talk a lot about technological things and technical things sometimes, when we speak about the digital transformation, but clearly it's us that are at the heart of this digital transformation. And so therefore, a significant part of what we'll be doing over the next period will be about engaging people. The collaborative framework, knowledge framework at the bottom there of the screen, that's about the documentation. That's about codifying and explaining the guidance for how we introduce BIM and information management into public projects, into policy, or into procurement organizations, for instance, as well. So that's what the knowledge framework is all about, those artifacts. Capacity building. In many ways, this is a really important part of the summary diagram of this roadmap, is that we're going to be driving the skills and expertise, the know-how, primarily on the public sector side, because again, the reason we started this is because there's lots of learning, and we believe the public sector can really progress to be a strong partner with industry. So that's how the roadmap works. I'm now going to go through each of these phases, starting around the phase one, this discovery phase. What do we mean by discovery? Well, this was our getting to know each other stage. This was about understanding what are our objectives, what are we trying to achieve, and what can we each bring to this global community of the public sector. You'll see here in the leadership lane that we had the formation of our advisory group, the commitment to the network's roadmap, which is where we are now today, of course. You'll see also that on the community side, it was about convening that network, building a community, and creating the structures that we have now. On the knowledge framework, it was the development of that knowledge base with relatively few articles. It's only, I think, about 60, just over 60 artifacts currently. Still very helpful, but that was the beginning. It was identifying that was a needed development that would help us all, was a really key moment in our discussions that we had as a group. Then we have the capacity building. Now, this again is something will evolve, but we're looking to understand what it is that we need to learn on the public sector side. What are the practices and capabilities and capacity that we need to develop? And that's why it's called the discovery phase, is we're learning at this stage. The next phase is, now we're moving out of this year, really. We haven't got years on the timeline here, but we're moving out of this period. And we're looking at things like, under the leadership column, of the network scope. What is it that we're going to really focus on? Of course, there are things, and I think I saw in the chat, things about the broader view. Is this just purely around BIM? Is it broader? Does it include digital twins? We've been speaking about information management. So it's to describe that more clearly, to define that more clearly. So that's what the review of the network scope will be. Developing the work groups. We've been just speaking about how we've got to understand what we need to build. What are the skills, the muscle that we need to develop as part of the public sector, and we will then build the work groups around those. So, for instance, public procurement. How do we introduce this into public procurement in a consistent way, in a way that's helpful? The communications will be building that connection out to industry. It's not something we've fully understood or defined how we'd do that as yet. The industry is huge, and we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts on that later on in some of the discussions as well. The final piece of this, of course, is around the capacity building. What we're really about in this phase of the journey is to begin developing those capabilities through the use of the Global BIM Network. We have the call for knowledge on the knowledge framework to increase that from 60 knowledge artifacts to a couple of hundred or more. So that's really going to help then inform the wider public sector. In order to then use this effectively, in order to then create scale, to move from, we have representative from, as I said, about 12 countries and 3 multilaterals, but to create scale and to be that strong partner and leader in this digital transformation, we need to be able to get that to a much wider audience. And that's what that third phase is all about. It's about developing a long-term strategy for the network. It's about expanding the reach of the public sector membership, developing those new knowledge products to address any gaps that we have. And finally, is to roll out that knowledge to a much wider external public sector audience. So we look forward to your comments and thoughts on this roadmap, and we will come back to that later on as well. Now, what I'd like to do is have a conversation with two of my colleagues in the steering committee. First of all, from Vietnam, Bin Ta, and from Czech Republic, Jaroslav Nehyba. Now, this conversation we're going to have. Hello, Bin. Hi, Jaroslav. Good to see you. This conversation, and it's late for you as well, Bin. I appreciate you joining us so late in Hanoi. Must be heading towards 9:30, I'm guessing, for you. Good to see you. So we will be having a conversation now just around what does the global network mean to some of our steering committee members. And in particular, we're going to think about some of the value that Bin and Jaroslav have observed over the past year that we've been working together on this. And also think about what the value could mean for you watching as well. So we're going to go through a quick discussion around that now. I should say, first of all, that Bin is head of the BIM team in the Institute of Construction Economics in the Ministry of Construction for Vietnam. And Jaroslav is director of the BIM strategy development team in the Czech Republic's Agency for Standardization. So good to see you both. Bin, I'm going to start with a question for you, if I can, which is, well, about your journey with the network. You've been part of the network since its formation. And I'd like to just hear your thoughts as to what you found to be useful from the network, in particular for you personally, and also for Vietnam.
Thank you, Andrew. Adam, sorry. So in fact, when we started our journey, like a BIM in government, we faced a lot of difficulty and challenge. For example, at the time, BIM is quite new. BIM was quite new in Vietnam, so we have lack of skill for BIM workforce, and didn't know what direction to go ahead. And then having a network initially since 2014 with Singapore BIM Symposium for government helped us a lot because it gave us an aspect of how other country in the world are doing it, like from their perspective. And then during this event, we also have representative from other countries such as UK, from EU, and then in the region. So it helps us a lot to have an access to other approach around the world. And besides, it also help our private sector to to get the job and then work internationally, because we have an advantage of labor workforce. We have a generation of young engineer focusing on new technology since they were students in university. So our private sector have involved a lot in outsourcing market. So I think involving with the Global BIM Network has a tremendous impact for our BIM journey.
Thanks, Ben. And we'll come back actually in a moment about the relevance that you see for academia and for the private sector as well for this sort of global community, because I think that's what you're just touching on there. Thanks. Yaroslav, similar question really for you in terms of how you've seen this affect your work and Czech Republic.
Thank you for my word. Hello, Adam and everybody here. It's a great honor for me to take part of this network and this event as well. So for me and for my colleagues, it's basically the source for our improvement and our self-confidence as well, because we all are doing more or less the same. And we have different starting points. We have different governmental support, different strategies on the country level. Somebody's running top to bottom, somebody leaving it from the bottom to top to improve the industry. But again, for me, it's very important inspiration for those who are ahead of us. And of course, I want to give back something for those who are slightly behind us, share our experience and our outcomes, which we already made. So it helps me to more assure myself and my team about our priorities, action plans, steps to do. That's what I'm seeing as the main value. And to be honest, sometimes helps me cheer up a little bit, because I can share that I'm not alone in some troubles, knowing that others have the same issues and the same situation, the same obstacles on the country level. So we can share the solutions, how to move forward, because that's the important thing for me.
Great. Thanks, Yaroslav. I think you touched on a real human aspect of this, which is providing confidence. Sometimes confidence that you're not alone with a particular challenge, but also gives you confidence that you're heading in the right direction with something possibly as well. So that's really good to hear. Good. Okay. Just a quick next question. Maybe Ben, if I could come back to you on this one, which is around you mentioned it partly, I think, which is about the relevance to academia and to the private sector. Could you just touch on that a bit more about the value of the global network that you perceive for the private sector signing up and getting involved with it?
Yes, I think that everybody evolving with BIM know the definition of like a common data environment, CDE. So I mean, Global BIM Network trying to do like a part of that. Like we will collect knowledge and then share knowledge and information with other members. So from the point of view of private sector or academia, joining Global BIM Network will enable them to learn about current status of BIM around the world, from information from public sector. So they can know what is the current status, how to if private sector look to have business abroad, it a great source of information as well. And for academia, collaboration in research, it is very important for the research.
Yeah, so it's I think in some ways you're describing that actually this is about providing some clarity, isn't it? It's providing some confidence. I'm going to pick up the word that Yaroslav used earlier. In some ways, the benefit of joining and signing up from the private sector perspective is providing confidence about what they're doing and how public sector are proceeding, So it's providing those clear messages between the public sector and private sector.
Yes, and we all know that from private sector point of view, investing in BIM is quite a commitment. So in order to do that, they need to know what other are doing, and what is the direction that other country, or if within the country, what government intend to do, because it will impact a lot their decision to invest in BIM, and to yes, you're right, to increase their level of confidence on what they are doing.
Yeah, and help them to work internationally as well, potentially by harmonizing some of that, some of those requirements. Great, thank you. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for that. Yaroslav, I had a quick look at Slido, and I think our audience is about 25% public sector, just over 50%, I think it is, private sector. BIM is just referring to the private sector, of course, academia as well, and standards bodies, I think around 6%. Multilateral organizations are about 15% in terms of our attendees. So welcome to you all, as we said. Great to have such a diverse group here. Maybe Yaroslav, you could comment on the value of getting involved from the public sector and multilateral perspective, if you could just provide some comments on that.
Yes, I think the 25% for public sector is a great number from my side, because usually in the past was much more lower this number, and much more much more the private sector involved in this movement. So that's great to hear that this number is getting higher. And of course, to express, we are talking about the information management, as you mentioned at the beginning. So I'm very happy to move that explaining that acronym from modeling to management, because it's much more exactly what we feel it is. And when we are talking about the management, we need to share. So it's really needed to cooperate between the private and public sector, because the public procurement must be very in cooperative mode with the supply chain. And if we want to help it with the digitizing the processes and the communication, which is the key part of the future value of the efficiency and expected savings, it's much more in that field of the management. It's not about just the data, but it's about the processes and the communication. And it's very, very impacted by the humans, by the people, by the experts and the users which are using the digital tools. So I think it's, again, the sharing the knowledge and creating some, let's say, trustworthy and trust environment between the private and the public sector is very important. And I feel that it's one of the key parts of future success of the BIM. So that's very important to support generally the cooperation and creating the process, the digital processes, which really gives the trust, because I feel that both sides creating together something we can call a built environment. So in our country, so we really want all of us enjoy it, and we cannot forget that that's our common aim, not just doing the digitizing. The digitizing is just the tool how to live our lives better. So we put that some kind of words in our statement, in our network, and I'm really, really fine with that. So that's how I feel that the private and public sector should cooperate together.
Absolutely. Thanks, Yaroslav. Collaboration is clearly going to be crucial, and getting involved is the first step in that. So we would welcome you to sign up. There's going to be, again, links in the chat as we go, or check out the website and just sign up on the website, of course, as well. You can do that there. If you're also in the public sector and you would like to have a direct conversation with us, then there's also an email that you can get in touch with us on there as well. Yaroslav, Ben, thank you very much for your comments and thoughts, and for being part of the steering committee as well. Good to see you again. Yaroslav, we'll see you later in one of the panel sessions, I know. I'm going to hand back to Alana now as well for those panel sessions. Thank you. Okay, Alana.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Ben and Yaroslav. Now we will hear from Global Network colleagues in 3 knowledge exchange panel sessions. Our first session will offer a global perspective on the development of methodologies to uncover the cost benefits of BIM. And now, if speakers for panel session 1 will turn on their cameras, I'm pleased to introduce you to today's speakers. Hello. Representing the Inter-American Development Bank is Claudia Suaznabar, lead specialist in the Competition, Technology and Innovation Division. And representing the EU BIM Task Group is Milena Feustel, co-chair of the task group. Thank you, speakers. You may turn your cameras off now. After we hear from Milena and Claudia, we will have a short discussion session. And now I'm pleased to hand it over to Milena Feustel of the EU BIM Task Group.
Respectively, good morning. My name is Milena Feustel, and I'm glad to be at the first annual Global BIM Network General Assembly and to present our cost-benefit analysis for BIM. As a co-chair of the EU BIM Task Group, I would like to start with a few words about our group, not only to promote our work, but also to invite you for future collaboration. So we are a bunch of representatives from 27 European countries. We all come from public authorities, both procurers or policymakers, and we work on different levels: national, regional, local. We are experts, pioneers, and beginners, but we have one thing in common, and that is that we believe that BIM is a game changer for the construction sector and for our society in general. And we should join efforts to make BIM the new normal standard for all. That's why we see ourselves as a double bridge, connecting the demand side with the supply side and with the enablers too. Our main goals are to increase productivity and sustainability of the EU construction sector, to facilitate open BIM as a common language in the construction sector, to ensure an efficient collaboration between public authorities and the private construction sector. We want to foster standardization, and at the same time, we want to deliver practical guidelines and support to public bodies within the EU. Currently, we work on 5 key objectives within our roadmap. So today's event focuses on our cost-benefit analysis. So I will proceed it with its initiation and implementation, and at the end, I will come back to these 5 key objectives and see how we contribute to these. So some time ago, we identified the demand for public bodies to demonstrate the economic viability for using BIM. In some EU countries, as you might know, there is no top-down approach for using BIM, and there we need to build the business case for each project individually. So we managed to verify the demand. We involved our stakeholders, and of course, we reassured the EU Commission that it's a project worth investing into. And here is the key data for the contract. As you see, we started beginning of September, and the duration of the project was just 9 months, which is a very ambitious plan, bearing in mind the corona situation and also the complexity of the matter. So let me give you a quick overview of the structure and outline of the CBA, cost-benefit analysis. It consists of three parts: development of the cost-benefit model, which includes methodology and tool, its validation by means of 6 case studies, and a handbook explaining the above. And if we have a look at the process, of course, we started with a status quo analysis, then complemented it by an online survey and interviews from our huge network, and identified suitable benefits and costs. So then we started developing the methodology and updated it continuously with the new insights from surveys and interviews. So here is a quick overview of costs, some benefits, for example, environmental benefits, savings through facility management, enhanced communication, collaboration, and so on. And the costs, for example, training, hardware, software, consulting costs. So once we had identified the different costs and benefits criteria, we actually, RENA, our contractor, developed a tool and validated it by using 6 different projects from 6 different countries. So we had a huge variety of types and location of the project. So the final step was to write a handbook, because this is the way we communicate. We publish online results, and this handbook includes the methodology, the cost benefits tool explained, and the 6 examples, the case studies in detail for the validation of the tool.
The Cost-Benefit Analysis, or CBA tool, has been designed for European public clients with varying degrees of knowledge and experience of BIM, Building Information Modelling, enabling them to evaluate the adoption of BIM in their projects with maximum clarity. This video will guide you through the steps required to calculate the costs and benefits of adopting BIM in public tenders. The CBA tool includes 4 main sheets: the input sheet, the results sheet, and the CBA sheets. Let's have a look at the first section called Preliminary General Information. Let's assume our organization has no prior experience with BIM and that BIM might be actively employed in 15 projects in a year. The project refers to a new residential building construction project, so here we select New Asset Construction. Let's assume that our project requires an investment for planning and design of about 69,000 euros and a foreseen construction cost of about 2.2 million euros. Let's assume our project requires 1 year for the completion of the construction stage and 1 year for the planning and design phase. In this case, we expect that BIM introduction in the organization will directly affect about 39 employees, considering those from the technical and procurement departments, project managers, and administrative office personnel. Because our project refers to a building, we indicate the gross floor area of the asset, corresponding to about 1,800 square meters. Do expect that the annual cost will be close to 30,000 euros. Next, in question 8, we select whether the BIM coordination is performed internally or externally. We select the latter option, as our organisation has no prior experience with BIM. In question 9, we provide the average salary of the employees in our organisation. In question 10, we indicate that we expect to use a common data environment in the project as required by tender documents. Finally, we also indicate the inflation rate we want to consider during the project period. We select 1 corresponding to basic design. Next, in question number 13, we indicate that the project relates to a building, selecting option number 2. Lastly, we indicate the average national hourly cost for a BIM specialist that is charged to public clients. In this case, we enter 25 euros per hour. In particular, we counted that the asset comprises about 125 rooms, whose surface is smaller than 25 square meters. So we select yes, then consider the rooms belonging to this range as being, on average, moderately complex, as they involve some details needing to be modelled. Therefore, we select 2 as the level of complexity. Lastly, we select 125 here. With the same logic, we counted the areas belonging to the other surface size ranges, and we also add 4 areas with a surface comprised between 150 and 300 square meters, representing the building facades, and an area with a surface larger than 300 square meters corresponding to the roof. All these surfaces, we believe, are relatively easy to be modelled. To complete this section, we finally select the average level of standardization of the asset areas, following the guidelines appearing in the pop-up window. For example, let's assume that our asset is composed of a set of standard housing units which are very similar to each other, so we select the standardization level of 3. In this case, we start by indicating yes for the mechanical system and, with an approach similar to the one adopted in the previous section, we evaluate the level of complexity of each system. In this case, we believe the system is not very complex, so we select 1. Lastly, for each system, we must consider the surface area of the building served by the system. In our case, this system is estimated to occupy an area of about 1,200 square meters, so we select option number 2. The same logic applies to the other systems. Here we can select the scenario we would like to consider, the baseline one, the pessimistic, or the optimistic ones. In this case, the overall project benefit cost ratio is higher than 1, and the associated net present value is positive. In this sense, the adoption of BIM in this case study is expected to be advantageous and sustainable. The layout of results for BIM Maturity Level 2 mirrors the BIM Maturity Level 1 results. To understand how the indicators and the values reported in this page have been obtained, it might be useful to check the pages dedicated to the cost-benefit analysis. At the top left of this page, it's possible to select the phase we'd like to focus on, but let's select all phases so we can view the entire page. Here, the inflation rate applied to the cost-benefit analysis indicated in the input page is reported. For each cost and benefit, you can select whether the indicator must be included or excluded from the analysis. Let's assume that our organisation does not need any investment in hardware upgrades, as we believe our current equipment already enables the proper adoption of BIM in the project. In this case, we select off. Some lines are dedicated to computing each year's total benefits and costs and their difference. An ad hoc cash flow is generated in this line, and this enables the computation of the indicators we have seen in the results page. Here, we can modify the discount rate to be applied to the computation of the indicators. Let's assume 4%, the default value, is suitable for our project. We can see that the only cells whose value can be modified are white.
So this was a very quick overview of the tool, the backbone of our cost-benefit analysis. So if we come back to our key objectives, and as I said earlier, we do believe to contribute to all of them, but mainly to A, B, and C, because the CBA delivers reliable insights and numbers for the appropriate use of public money. That would be A. It contributes to more transparency and efficiency of public projects, B, and it facilitates the use of BIM, thus strengthening the construction sector, which is a major player of the EU single market. Now let me have a look what we plan to do next. So first of all, we want to promote and use the CBA tool or the methodology and the handbook. So we need to show the advantages in practice. And for this purpose, we use our network. The UBIM task group is disseminating the project. There has been translation into Greek and in Czech, and we expect other countries to follow. So this is very important. Then we want to establish it as a benchmark for public projects, either as a starting point for procurement with BIM or for further phases within ongoing projects or facility management and so on. And we want to place it at the heart of our activities with the European Commission, within the EU Green Deal, for example, for the renovation wave, for the European Bauhaus, Fit for 55, and so on. What we do continue to work on is to improve the CBA, all parts of it, and to update it. So therefore, we need your input and your support. So that was a quick introduction and overview. Here's the homepage where you can find further information and have a look at the tool, read the handbook, and so on. Thank you for your interest, and I'm really looking forward to your insights and input. And I hope we can collaborate in the future on the digitization of the construction sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. Now we will hear from Claudia Sausnavar of the Inter-American Development Bank, who will discuss the strategic objectives for the development of their BIM cost-benefit methodology. Over to Claudia.
Today. Thank you so much for the invitation. We're very happy to be at the Global Summit again. It's always a very interesting space to learn a lot from what other countries are doing in this field. So today they asked me to talk about the evaluation methodology of BIM use in public construction projects. And I thought I'd start talking about what is the IDB and why we are interested in this, in the measurement of BIM results. So IDB is a multilateral development bank. We provide financing to governments in Latin America and the Caribbean for the development of different public investment projects, be it in the infrastructure sector, in the education sector, and so on and so forth. We also provide not only financing, but also technical assistance, and we do capacity building to be able to improve the quality of policy design and implementation. And we work not only with the infrastructure sector, but also in fields such as innovation and digital transformation, which is what's studied and promoted in the division I work for. So looking at BIM, we see that the usage of BIM in the region is still quite incipient. As you can see in the graph to your right of the screen, it's a relatively new technology for Latin America, and the construction industry is just recently starting to use it. But from the government side, we increasingly see interest in starting to implement BIM in public works, and lots of interest in developing public national strategies to support BIM adoption in different countries. So in this context, IDB has commissioned the development of a methodology to measure results from BIM implementation in public sector projects. We have hired a Spanish engineering and construction firm called INECO. And we are basically in the middle of the development of this methodology. It's a work in progress still. We are expecting to finish it around early next year. And the idea is that this methodology hopefully will help to accelerate BIM adoption throughout the region, sorry. So how is this methodology being developed? Well, we first, INECO started reviewing all existing methodologies for evaluating infrastructure projects using BIM, gathering information from existing case studies and different private sector experiences that have been documented. And all this information just confirmed the wide diversity of methodologies to measure BIM that are being used in the industry, both quantitative and qualitative. It also confirmed what we thought was an issue in Latin America, but apparently it's a shared issue related to the difficulty of actually using data to create control groups that help us measure the exact impact that BIM has on our infrastructure projects. So this issue that economists call attribution, what portion of the improvements in performance in our projects are due to the actual use of BIM and what portion is not. And there's a lot less literature and experience in doing this in the industry. And finally, we were looking also for experiences in Latin America and the Caribbean, or at least with data, performance data from projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. We found this to be super scarce. And although we are interested in measuring performance in projects that use BIM, we also are looking for information on performance from projects that do not use BIM to use as comparisons. And that data also is proving to be quite scarce.
Excusez-moi, mais je viens de me rebrancher.
After this initial review, the methodology is right now being developed with regards as to its core content. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit more in detail of this in the next slides, but INEGO proceeded to define what sort of benefits we would be measuring and how we would measure them through different indicators and KPIs, basically related to costs, time, and quality of the project. We are in the process right now of finishing the definition of KPIs and doing the validation with project experts in a few countries. And when this is developed, we will try out the methodology in 3 pilots. We are choosing 3 pilots in 3 different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. When we have been able to try it out in these countries, we hope we can iterate and finish a complete methodology, which we expect to be available, as I was saying, early next year. So the type of measurement of BIM results we're expecting to be able to get in our projects are twofold. First of all, we're trying to get indicators that are going to allow us to measure before and after interventions along the life cycle of a project. This means we will be able to compare actual performance indicators versus initially programmed indicators. And second, we are also going to be able to compare BIM results in a project with the performance results obtained in a comparable project through differences approach. So what are some of the, going a little bit deeper into the actual methodology, we, in the definition of BIM benefits and KPIs, this, I was saying we're right in the middle of this, the firm is right in the middle of this exercise. But we basically started from the definition of BIM uses by Penn State, and we increased the number of types of benefits that, that Penn State initially listed. And then we did a weaving out process and standardization of these benefits, and we came out with this list of 18 benefits we're going to be measuring with different KPIs. In order to facilitate comparisons among projects, KPIs are going to be always defined with a specific formula and a protocol for data collection, and they will always be expressed in percentage terms just to ensure comparability among different project types. Okay. So this issue of comparability is very important for us because we're going to be working in many different countries, many different sectors, and as you know, this is a very hard thing to achieve. The other thing we are being careful with is trying to select KPIs and the KPI data collection protocol in such a way that it's aligned with mainstream practices in today's industry. That means we don't want to overburden project teams with having to collect very difficult data or non-existing data. And this is why we are trying to make this as easy to implement as possible. We are going to collect data, as I was saying, at the project level from our different kinds of infrastructure projects. We're going to be also collecting information from comparable projects that have not used BIM to use as our control groups. And in order to build this comparable projects, potential control groups, the methodology is making a difference between 3 types of variables. In order to classify and compare projects, we will be looking at external data from the country, from the sector, at project data that's not related to BIM, be it the type of contract, the phase of the life cycle of the project we're focusing on, etc. Budgets, for instance. And we will also be looking at BIM internal variables. Under the BIM internal variables, we are going to collect data about the common data environment, about the BIM team, about the extent of the BIM execution plan, and so forth, just to be able to illustrate that there's also different ways that a project can implement BIM. It's not so. In order to be able to map out all the different aspects that a project is implementing related to how to implement BIM, actually, we are proposing a very thorough data collection in that regard too. So we expect to finish with a sort of dashboard. This is, of course, something very, very initial, where we're going to be able to do more easily all the data analytics to compare projects. And what we're doing in order to be able to prove and try out the methodology at the pilot level is we're choosing projects that already know they already have sort of rigorous control groups that we can test the methodology with. So one of the pilots, for instance, going to be in Costa Rica, where we're going to measure the performance on one portion of a road construction project that's using BIM, and we're going to compare it to another portion of a road project that's not using BIM. In the case of Uruguay, one of the alternatives we're exploring is also doing a measurement of the building of one type of education construction that's done by an agency that actually finances several of these constructions, which are relatively similar. And that's why we're trying to, as I was saying, to look for projects that will have easy to use comparison groups. Going forward, though, the idea is to start collecting data to be able to develop a project database that going forward is going to be useful to measure different kinds of projects that want to measure BIM performance. So we will be little by little, our idea is to start building this database with inputs from the different countries and start accumulating this data so future control groups will be easier to design. So we are expecting, so the expected impact of the methodology, as I was saying in the beginning, we want this to be a really practical tool for both project managers from IDB and multilateral institutions and government counterparts. We are very optimistic in the results we expect from its implementation. We believe making the measurement of results easier is going to actually foster increased adoption and investment in BIM in the region by our governments in the LAC region. And we believe this is going to happen two ways. One, because using BIM results and comparable data from BIM projects, we hope we can accelerate the learning process of the what and how BIM works at the project level. So we will be able to correct or avoid possible mistakes sooner than later. And second, we believe that having more data available and more quantitative data available is also going to be able to better illustrate use cases of BIM in the region. And this is going also to be able to help us compare among different projects that is something we are not able to do right now. So we are very, 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 very optimistic in the importance of the tool we are developing, and we really are looking forward to discussing this with all of you in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you again to both Claudia and Milena for their informative presentations. It's clear that within the diversity of digital maturity between European states and the Americas, there are many similarities in the strategic approach to measuring the benefits of BIM, as well as within the methodology itself. At this time, I'd like to invite Milena and Claudia to turn their cameras on for a short discussion. We welcome audience comment at this time. Please feel free to comment on the chat feature, and thank you for your questions. You may also let us know of your experience of using BIM cost-benefit methodology by taking part in our Slido poll. As a reminder, today's event is being held in English, Spanish, French, and Japanese. You should see at the bottom of your screen the option to select your language. We'll now start by asking Milena a question on her presentation. So during your presentation, Milena, you mentioned the EU Green Deal, which has set some ambitious objectives for sustainable infrastructure delivery and maintenance in the coming years. How does the cost-benefit analysis tool support the transition to a green economy in Europe?
Thank you for the nice question. Actually, as you might know, the Green Deal has the ambitious plan to implement some legal or recommendable issues by 2030 and 2050. to supply clean, affordable, and secure energy, to ensure that we use more recycling and more, more actions to protect the environment in many ways. And as you have seen, the cost-benefit analysis includes certain indicators which already include the CO2 emissions and health and safety improvement as indicators for the benefits or for the costs referring to BIM. But what we also think would be very helpful in the future to include further indicators. Let's say if we say adaptation and resilience to climate change, this could be a very important issue. And I think this is not only a matter of how much it would cost, but how far it will improve our lives or benefit to our well-being. Resource efficiency and material flows in terms of recycling could be another important indicator. Or very important too is the efficiency of water use. We have to concentrate on materials in general terms, but water specifically. So yeah, I think it's just the beginning of our journey, because we just started to get a monetary idea how far we can calculate costs and benefits. But bearing in mind the current initiatives, the current developments, I think we should update it and add further criteria, and therefore support the Green Deal of the European Commission.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your answer. And I'm sure that Claudia is going to pick on some of those impacts in this question. So Claudia, over to you. What are the drivers behind governments in Latin America and the Caribbean wanting to adopt national strategies in built environment information management? And related to that, how do you think that the IDB cost benefit methodology will help in those nations building the case for a national initiative?
Thank you very much, Alana and Milena, also for the time, the invitation, and the opportunity to be here with you today. So I think in Latin America, cost efficiency is driving most of the decision by governments to start investing and promoting BIM in public works. I think that the moment where we are at right now with fiscal constraints, strong fiscal constraints in the region due to the pandemic crisis, is only making it more appealing than before. So I think we actually have an opportunity to keep moving this forward. In Latin America, I think a second driver is related to transparency, the ability of this methodology and in general digital tools to give more transparency about what's going on with the resources, the use of resources in public work projects is another of the very important drivers I see in the region. And I think thirdly, some governments are interested in the digital transformation of the productive sectors, construction being one of them. And we have, although this has not been a key driver in the past, I think due to the current pandemic moment we are facing and the increased push for digital transformation across the board, I think this is gaining more momentum. But our methodology about, you were asking, what do we see, how this would push these drivers going forward? I think we have a strong linkage with the cost efficiency driver. Our idea is that having more quantitative data that's actually relatable to Latin American projects is going to be able to not only make governments that are on the fence decide to start investing in BIM, but also it's going to help governments that have already decided to timidly start investing in pilots, say, think of scaling this up. So we are counting that this methodology it's different than the EU's in the sense that this is an ex-post methodology. But we think that this its ability to leverage future investments is there in being able to demonstrate what happened with the investments governments did, however small they were, and then being able to build on that. But I think that what Milena was saying about this being the first step I think that this is very important. It's how we view this too. These methodologies always have to be refined continuously with the inclusion of more data. The methodology is going to become more precise. And I think in reaching this objective of making it more precise, it's going to be very important that we ensure that we have a lot of data. So the more users we have in this methodology, the better it will be measuring actual benefits or net benefits from BIM, and thus governments will have a more precise tool to decide their investments upon.
Fantastic. Thank you for your answer. And thank you to both of you, Milena and Claudia. Unfortunately, we're very short on time, and I know that we could keep this conversation going for quite a while. So with that, we'll close the discussion, and both of you may turn your cameras off. And I know that this conversation has been useful to those in our network who are currently developing business cases for BIM across nations or across their organization. With that, we will now open panel 2, from policy to implementation, a discussion of procurement practices from around the world. I'm delighted to introduce you to Luke Belfield, who is Acting Chief Engineer for the Office of Projects Victoria, to discuss Australia's federated approach to procurement. After Luke's presentation, we will have a roundtable conversation with panelists from the Global BIM Network Steering Committee. And now, over to Luke.
Hello from Australia. My name is Luke Belfield, and I'm the Acting Victorian Chief for the Government of Victoria. I will present an overview of our work, and more specifically the Digital Build Program and the recently released Digital Asset Policy. To set the scene, Australia is facing an infrastructure boom, which is pretty similar to a lot of other locations around the world. As you can see here, the wave of incoming infrastructure projects being delivered is very large. Victoria is a significant contributor to Australia's pipeline, with a spend of 144 billion Australian dollars, which is equivalent to about 80 billion UK pounds. We recognise that not only will these assets be built in the next 5 to 10 years, but will need to be maintained for the next 50 to 100 years. And the construction industry building this pipeline has a long way to go to improve its practices, especially in comparison to other sectors. Currently, construction is one of the lowest digitised sectors, just above hunting and agriculture, as you can see on the right. And we are looking at how we can improve this for Australia. So it's important, before we get into the detail, to just highlight the role, or where Office of Projects Victoria sits within Victorian Government, which is where I'm housed. So the Victorian State Government has 9 departments. OPV, Office of Projects Victoria, sits within the Department of Treasury and Finance, which has a central role in providing oversight across all of the government portfolios, as well as providing systemic improvements across them as well for projects. This means initiatives we deliver have an impact across transport, justice, education, health, and many other infrastructure project portfolios. In addition to a whole of government perspective, we also deliver technical project support to some of Australia's largest or biggest infrastructure projects being led out of Victoria. My organisation's objective is to improve Victorian major infrastructure project delivery and efficiency by providing unique insights, practical tools and support. So to this end, we are focusing our efforts on relieving what we've determined to be the big 4 repeat pain points for Victorian infrastructure projects. We're aiming to improve planning processes with streamlined digital submissions and approvals, make tendering and procurement easier and cheaper with digital submissions, comparisons and standards taken from one contract to the next, enhance our ability to measure genuine and current project performance with analytics, dashboards and improved data, and leverage the technology to improve design and engineering practice with enhanced visualizations and tools such as class detection. This is a significant job, but we've already started by setting up a program of works called the Digital Build Program. Our digital build program is funded to drive whole of government transformation, to build a smarter government and bring our delivery partners in industry along with us, and we're underway. We released our Victorian Digital Asset Strategy in March 2020. We built upon this guidance document to deliver a program of works called the Digital Build Program, to build a smarter major projects pipeline and deliver better outcomes for Victorians through better information management. As I mentioned earlier, while we have a focus on project delivery, we recognise that projects deliver a service for people. Therefore, it is vitally important to note that decisions made at the front end of the project lifecycle have a significant impact on the way that they hand it over into operations, and therefore the potential benefits or services they deliver for people. So I've mentioned digital assets a few times, but what is a digital asset? At its core, it is the associated data that is required to be generated or developed in order to build a physical asset and bring it into service. I want to highlight that we're not just talking about 3D information and visualization such as digital twins, but all project data such as time, cost, procurement and supply chain information that's required to deliver an asset. It is also being smarter about the way we use data and having an ability, once a translatable structure has been determined and set, to integrate project data streams. So for example, being able to combine cost and time information to derive a cash flow, or combining time and design engineering data to be able to undertake constructability analysis. By understanding this associated information and its influence on project delivery, this diagram explains the comparison between traditional projects and our new way of working. Currently depicted in the red line, we have projects losing information quality and value when information is handed over between parties or project stages. Through good digital information management, we're reducing the loss of information and improving projects before they start, and importantly, when they've handed over into operations, resulting in reduced errors, faster and less costly projects, and improved operational or service outcomes. To tackle this issue, it really requires a change management approach, as a lot of the technology to do this is already in existence. We are undertaking initiatives across process technology and people to ensure this is not simply a technology-based problem or solution, and we bring people along the journey and they ultimately see and experience the benefits of this for their projects. Within our digital build program, we have our digital assets workstream and our offsite construction workstream. In the digital assets workstream, we've released the digital asset policy, which I'll talk about in a minute. We're also delivering pilots to demonstrate good practice, part of the change management journey, capture the benefits and share this across government. We're currently developing, so to speak, a menu of initiatives that a project could implement to improve their performance. This is founded on considering the whole of government layer, where important interactions with, for instance, planning approvals or central agency project performance reporting is required. A project layer to highlight the different silos of data within a project, and an application layer, which looks at the digital interface project teams use to develop and interact with their data. So for instance, a scheduler using Primavera P6. These learnings will then be used more broadly across government. We also have an offsite construction workstream, which is looking to normalise modern methods of construction for government. We're delivering policy, guidance, contractual clauses and training to support this. As mentioned initially, in September, we released our digital asset policy. Pictured here is our Treasurer, the Victorian Treasurer, releasing this at the Built Environment Summit, which is a public forum held in Australia. It is also important to note that the Treasurer has been a great supporter of our digital build program. This policy lays a powerful foundation for digital practice for our government project teams. This work is informed by the learnings of many different jurisdictions, as well as international good practice, such as the International Standard for Information Management, ISO 19650. This is an extract from the construction phase of the investment lifecycle from this document. The lifecycle that projects must follow and is supported by continuous performance reporting requirements, as well as assurance processes. As you can see, requirements are graduated according to a project's risk and value profile and arranged in themes. This allows requirements to be fit for purpose, so we're not applying the same requirements of a complex heavy rail project to that of an ambulance station. It has also been designed to be easily navigated using plain English. In implementing the policy, I wanted to highlight the importance of plain English, and it's one of the successes for us in engaging getting take-up from our project stakeholders. We've seen many digital transformations fail because they expect all other disciplines, or projects in this case, to use technology and tools such as BIM, digital engineering, and data standards. Instead of us learning IT language, we're working on translating that into language our project teams understand and use. This has worked to get us better engaged, but it will keep the success of the project and enable us to talk at a leadership level and get them to really understand why this is important. So what's next? We are piloting our digital build system by undertaking pilots with major projects and project organisations and gathering performance data to capture the benefits of good information management. We're also delivering standardised contractual clauses in support of the recently released digital asset policy, which will then enable requirements to flow down from our government project teams to the government contractors and subcontractors, as well as the advisors that we have used on projects. We'll also look to update our guidance as well as develop asset standards, as we know this transformation needs to be tackled from multiple dimensions. So thank you for your time today, and thanks to the Global BIM Network for the opportunity to present. Thank you, and please reach out if you wish to discuss our approach or have further questions.
Thank you, Luke. We will now start our live panel discussion. Speakers, if you can turn your cameras on, I will introduce you. Representing Australia is Matthew Kehoe, Director of the Digital Build Program for the Office of Projects Victoria. Coming back to us and representing the Czech Republic is Jaroslav Nehyba, Director of the BIM Strategy Department at the Czech Agency for Standardization. And moderating our discussion today is Roger Grant, Executive Director for Building Information Management at the National Institute of Building Sciences in the United States. We also invite you to let us know about your procurement practices by participating in our Slido poll. Now, over to Roger.
Thanks, Alana, and hello, greetings, Matthew and Jaroslav. Good to be here with you today to talk about public procurement and all the related activities that go along with setting up for that. It was very interesting, Matthew, to see Luke present on the efforts underway in Victoria. I was struck by the way your program is focused in two broad areas, and I thought we might just talk a little bit about, I think a lot of public procurement practice has to do with making the transition from planning and strategizing to moving to implementation. And once you're implementing, how do you organize that in a way that connects with your stakeholders? And so I thought that selection of digital assets, digital build, and offsite construction, whether conscious or not, was an interesting way to connect to the organizations you're going to be procuring from. And maybe if you could comment on that a little bit. I'd also say one other thing. I looked through your presentation and I only saw BIM mentioned once in all the slides. So maybe you could also talk a little bit about the strategy part to maybe resonate with the other public agencies that are on the line, how you've organized the strategy and then connected it to procurement or planning for procurement.
Sure. Well, thank you, Roger, for great questions, and thanks for having us today from Australia. The first question about the two work streams that we've got, the offsite construction and the digital side of it. why we chose to run them side by side within the same program is really because they're so integrated. Offsite construction, prefabrication, modularization leverages a lot of BIM approaches, using asset libraries, regular kit of parts approaches. And because they're so integrated, they really snowball the effect. If we can get digital in practice through offsite construction, it becomes normalized in it, and we get that supply chain uptake. So that was a strategic effort on that. And the second question about our language or our choice of language, you've picked up on, it is really deliberate. There's some comments that have come through in the bottom, and there's quite good debate in the chat about BIM, digital engineering, information management. What's the right approach here? And we don't think there is one language to rule them all. All of these languages have their place. And there was a great comment, I think, from Isla about we've got to build consensus on this language. It's an evolving landscape. We've chosen to go towards the information management language because that resonates with our projects. Our project people are not technicians, they're construction engineers. They live in that construction world and that language. And we really have to make the effort as experts to put it in our language. There's been lots of BIM strategies and BIM efforts that have failed because the language is too technical, that it doesn't get strategic support at an executive level. We've observed that, and we've deliberately made an effort to put all our policies in plain English so we can get that uptake.
Oh, great. That's interesting. I did notice the emphasis on language and how you were looking to align that with the procurers, with the organizations you're looking to procure from, and I suppose the constituents that are working on your projects. So that's interesting, and I think as a public agency thinking about, you have to think about what you need to do internally to utilize the technology, but also being very conscious about who's going to be receiving that, and that those requests is really important to think about. And so I guess you've made that a very conscious conscious strategy. That's interesting. And has the private sector, I guess you're just now getting to start pilot projects, so you'll find out how that resonates, but perhaps you've already had discussions that led to this decision, focus, emphasis?
Yes, we really engage with the private sector a lot, where our success or failure depends on it. So the biggest conversation we have with the private sector in developing our strategy is, where are the pain points in procurement? What's the hard points for them? Because if it becomes cheaper and easier for the private sector to engage with government, that's cheaper and easier for us. That's cheaper for the citizen who we're working for. So we're asking them, is it what hurts for you? Is it in the manual processes? Is it in the changing standards from one project to the next? Is it in a lack of digitization or changing technology from every project to the next? So we're asking those questions and getting answers to inform our strategy.
Yeah, and I like that, what that might offer to the rest of us around the world that are working in this same way to organize procurement, move from planning into implementation, and that making sure we're using common and interpretable language is really important. So maybe Jaroslav, along the same vein, you could comment. I understand in the Czech Republic, you're working on a program to upskill the procurers in different agencies to try to achieve some level of, can I interpret, to try and achieve some level of common utilization of procurement practices and and the language associated with that?
Yes, I can fully confirm what Matthew said previously, because I feel it's very important to speak with one language, so terminology. And,
Ok, donc je peux confirmer ce qui s'est dit auparavant au niveau de la terminologie.
People understand each other as the humans is the first step.
Donc je comprends donc au début.
To find the common digital language for our software tools as well, because we are looking and we are talking about digital transformation, not just about the BIM, but the final scope and the final goal is much wider, and we are looking for the, let's say, more far future goal. It's called the digital model for the built environment and so on and so on. So we need to collect the data, which could be machine readable, can be trustworthy by the software solution, so we can use them for our efficiency. So there are two levels where we can find, where we need to find the common understanding between the public sector and all the supply chain and the manufacturers, because it's not just about the architects and a construction company, but it's a really wide part of it. It's really the manufacturers which are delivering a lots of information into the management process through the whole life cycle. So we need to really get involved all the industry and find really the common solution for the digital transformation. And in this, we found the one, let's say, issue, or one. I feel it's because of let's say the marketing activities, and it's related with the stages how the, let's call the BIM is developing. That almost all organizations are really focused about the pilot projects and running the projects and how to do the projects and so on and so on. But after that, when you're asking them what they are doing with those data they are collecting under the projects, you can find that they cannot use it in a fully efficiency. So that's why we are really focusing about trying to force or motivate the organization to create their own organization strategy, how to implement really the digital information management inside the organization. So all the departments, all the parts of the organization can share the data. They can use the data, reuse the data, so they are not inputting and creating the data again and again. So that's very important for us to move organization into their own strategies. That's how we feel it right now.
That's a great point. From my experience, Yaroslav, I think we see a lot of organizations here in the US have asked for digital deliverables, building information models, but then once they get them, what they do with them is another challenge. And the providers quickly realize, if you're asking me for something that you're not really using, I don't pay as much attention to what I'm delivering as if I know it's going to be utilized for some process that really is part of your business model, the way you operate. And I think that aspect of upskilling on the public side is really important. It takes some hard work to align the data that's coming in with the systems that you use internally. Has that been part of your thinking, Matthew, in Victoria, to think about, we're going to go out and ask for these digital builds, but then how do we line it up with our internal operations so that we are making use, and so the requirements reflect what we're actually going to do with the data that we're asking for?
Yeah, I think it's a universal challenge for all of us, that aspect, and we've got the similar situation where private is definitely ahead of public in their skills and capability, and even within government we're finding that our project space is more advanced than our operations and maintenance space. So even what our government project delivery agencies are producing, we're losing that quality of detail because our asset and operation space is not as far along the journey. It's not as digitally mature. It's an enormous challenge because it's bogged down in regulation, legislation, legacy, all these intertwining factors of our big franchise operators, our railway operators, our roads operators that have complex contract models that we have to detangle. For us, it's a job of chipping away at them one by one, but also providing the incentives on future contracts to improve that practice. It's definitely not an area for short-term wins for us to close that gap. It's a long-term strategy, but it will have extremely long-term benefits. So we're really taking a slow burn and incremental approach on it.
And you have to start, and it does really build on itself. So getting the foundation in place, getting the requests, and the paving the way, making the ground for delivering digitally is really important to be able to then continue to integrate. I think that's interesting at the project level, how the projects can use data most expediently. I was just at a conference here in the US, the International Highway Engineers Conference, and there's a lot of discussion about using the model as the legal document. So I don't know if it's interesting to me how that works. When we have paper, we can stamp the document and then we review that it was certified by the engineer. When we move to modeling, that's a whole nother challenge. How do you mark a model as being certified for the design to allow the project team to check it, which is an important use case. Yaroslav, is that something your program is addressing in Czech Republic?
Yes, that's one of the very important topic, as well as the very important topic in how to do the archiving the digital data for the long term, because when we are looking, let's say, not far future, when we do the paperless projects and all the data will be stored just by the digitized way, it's very important to find really sustainable archiving, trustworthy and legal confirmed data to be stored in, for example, national archives or archives for the specific organization. So that's the related topic with the let's say legal stamps or signing or specifically defining the amount of the data which is related to the specific date or specific milestone in the project. So that's very important as well. And as Matthew mentioned before, that we are really focused on the amount of the data and the information which is running through the project, and we are using here the principle which is quite important and it's standardized on the European level. It's called LOIN. It's the level of information needed, and it's really run by the purposes and use cases why the data it's required by the public procurers, and they should be really careful setting up the list of the purposes why they are requiring the specific data from the projects.
Well, thanks, Yaroslav, and thanks, Matthew. I think the appearance of Alana is signaling that our time is up. Sadly, this is a conversation that could go on for quite some time. I think many interesting issues we've talked about, setting up to do pilots, working with our constituents, our stakeholders, getting them engaged in the process. Seen a lot of comments about incentivization, and I think that's an interesting topic, how to use that. What are the use cases that we're really trying to solve with when we move into implementation? Real important. So lots of great conversation, and I'm sure more to come. Thank you both for joining me today, and I look forward to continuing this more in the future. Alana, is that good? Do we pass
That's
over
perfect,
to you?
Roger. Yeah, pass it on over to me. And thank you all for the very interesting conversation on how procurement can be used as a lever to embed information management in public projects. We'll now close panel session 2 and open panel session 3, government and industry, working together to improve benefits for people and places. I will now introduce our speakers. Representing the United Kingdom is Fergus Herodant, Deputy Director for Construction and Materials at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Duly representing Colombia will be Daniel Gomez, Deputy Director at the National Planning Department, and Jonathan Bernal, Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Energy at the National Planning Department. Representing Chile is Sebastián Manriquez, Subdirector for Plan BIM of the Chilean Corporación de Fomento de la Producción. And moderating the discussion will be Valentina Sarmiento, President of the BIM Network of Latin American Governments. Thank you, panelists. And now I will hand it off to our first speaker, Fergus Herodant.
Good day, everyone. It's an honour and a pleasure to be able to participate in the Global BIM General Assembly and to have the opportunity to talk about the UK's BIM journey over the past decade and our vision for the future of the built environment. During the past decade, BIM has transformed the design and delivery of construction in the UK. It has saved money, reduced carbon emissions and waste, and delivered better and safer built assets. But we have only started to realise its potential to drive improvements in construction or to contribute to the wider digitisation of the built environment. The story of the next decade will be how BIM and other digital technologies will transform the way in which we think about and manage our built environment. They will drive a transition to a systems-based approach that will link buildings, infrastructure, transport and energy networks, and enable us to transform the delivery of public services and promote greener and more sustainable towns and cities. The UK's BIM journey has already lasted over a decade. The 2011 construction strategy placed information management at the centre of the delivery of government construction projects by including the commitment that BIM Level 2 be used on all government construction projects from 2016, which is known as the BIM mandate. We recognise that achieving this aim would require coordinated action across government, the wider public and private sectors. So in 2011, the UK BIM Task Group was formed by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, working with government departments and with industry through the UK's Construction Industry Council. Subsequently, we created the Public Sector BIM Working Group and the Home Nations Working Group, building links with local government in England and with the governments of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to promote a shared approach to the implementation of BIM. As BIM has developed, so have our structures. We created the Public Sector ISO Transition Working Group to support government departments and agencies to collectively plan and deliver a consistent transition to the new ISO 19650 BIM standard. As BIM has become established in the UK, we've also faced the challenge of ensuring the interoperable exchange of information. Interoperability is pivotal to delivering the whole life beneficial outcomes of BIM to clients in the construction industry, through providing a means of information transfer between different proprietary technologies. In 2019, we created the BIM Interoperability Expert Group, which reported in April 2020 and proposed changes in the way that information is generated, processed and stored in order to deliver this. This has helped promote better understanding of processes and technologies, greater clarity around the approach and standards required, and in turn has helped suppliers to deliver what the government wants. Recognising the common global challenges in relation to infrastructure construction, the UK also launched the BIM International Programme. This included working with the International Standards Organisation to develop the ISO 19650 standard for BIM and working bilaterally with countries in Latin America, Asia, Africa, and also with multilateral institutions such as the Inter-American Development Bank. We've also embedded the UK BIM programme into a wider technology programme to improve the built environment through incorporating the UK Centre for Digital Built Britain into the Construction Innovation Hub. This is developing a range of digital and manufacturing technologies for the construction sector and also supporting the UK's Digital Twin programme. BIM is an essential technology for the future of construction, supporting industrialisation and the utilisation of common designs and components across many different building types. Our National Digital Twin programme was established in 2017 following the publication of the data for the Public Good Report by the UK's National Infrastructure Commission. This recognised the value of information originating from the built environment and enshrined the principle that this should be used to deliver benefits for all users of the built environment in perpetuity. The focus of work on digital twins is to develop the information management framework. This is a set of protocols and standards for the secure and resilient gathering, analysing and exchange of information by infrastructure and buildings. This framework will over time support the creation of the National Digital Twin through allowing the networking of these different built assets. And these technologies are already being deployed in the UK. The Credo Climate Resilience Demonstrator, which we launched to coincide with the COP26 conference in the UK, brings together the energy, water and telecoms sectors to explore how connected data and information sharing, as well as data interoperability, can improve the climate adaptability and resilience of infrastructure. So there is a continuum between BIM and other technologies that will transform the built environment and deliver improved economic, social and environmental outcomes. The government recently published its vision for the built environment, which sets out an approach to managing the built environment through linking the societal objectives we want to achieve with the policies, infrastructure investment decisions and operational management of the built environment that will deliver them. Digital information is the thread that links these activities and enables them to inform and support each other, which is why embedding BIM and other digital technologies is a key theme of the UK's construction playbook and also the value toolkit which we are using to improve the way in which we procure and deliver construction in the UK. In conclusion, the UK's BIM journey of the last decade has seen us make enormous progress and embed this technology within infrastructure and construction delivery in the UK. But we are yet to realise the full potential of BIM or of wider digitisation, and the BIM journey of the next 10 years promises to be an even more interesting and exciting one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fergus. Next, I will hand it off to Danielle Gomez.
Muchas gracias por la invitación a participar en Global BIM Network. Para nosotros es una gran oportunidad para compartir nuestra experiencia en la formulación, implementación, diseño, seguimiento de la Estrategia Nacional de Implementación de la Metodología BIM en Colombia. Quiero contarles 4 cosas en esta intervención para empezar con este panel. Uno, contarles cómo se desarrolló la estrategia BIM en Colombia. Entonces hay 2 antecedentes importantes. Uno es la política de transformación digital e inteligencia artificial de 2019 en Colombia, que fue una primera política sombrilla importante en este gobierno y durante los últimos 3 años ya va cerrando para generar la transformación digital en Colombia con miras a aumentar la productividad. Y dentro de esta estrategia estaba toda la transformación digital de sectores de la construcción, de infraestructura, sectores productivos y también del gobierno. Entonces, esta primera política es un hito importante para generar un marco para la implementación de metodologías y tecnologías diferentes como son BIM. BIM en este momento ya contaba con varias iniciativas aisladas y se requería un esfuerzo de consolidación de todas esas experiencias en una sola estrategia. Lo primero que se hizo fue crear un grupo de trabajo BIM que unificó todos estos esfuerzos, en particular desde el sector privado, representado por el BIM Forum Colombia, la academia, que también participó muy activamente, y por supuesto desde el gobierno nacional, desde el orden nacional, con liderazgo del Departamento Nacional de Planeación, Ministerio de Transporte, Ministerio de Vivienda, Ministerio de Hacienda, la Financiera de Desarrollo Nacional, pero también pensando en involucrar a los entes territoriales y al nivel subnacional. Para el 2020, cuando existían algunos desarrollos en esta estrategia BIM y el grupo de trabajo BIM venía desarrollando una estrategia, hubo un hito importante en 2020, en la mitad de la pandemia además, con la firma del memorando de entendimiento con el gobierno del Reino Unido y la FDN. La firma de este memorando, que involucraba a todas las entidades importantes a nivel nacional en términos de infraestructura, construcción, planeación, política, 14 entidades en total, fue un hito y un acelerador importante para avanzar en la consolidación de una estrategia nacional BIM. El memorando llevó a no solo una aceleración por la articulación que logramos, sino que también a un intercambio de conocimiento, a una consultoría, a trabajo de la mano con consultores y con la experiencia del Reino Unido en la implementación de BIM, y a involucrar a todos los sectores. Fue una estrategia realmente de triple hélice con el Estado, con la empresa, con la academia, garantizando una continuidad y una articulación de toda esta estrategia BIM. Trabajamos en más de 30 mesas de trabajo, integrando también visión de entidades públicas territoriales, que fue muy importante, es un hito clave, con los ministerios relacionados con temas de construcción e infraestructura, y logrando así una visión concertada y avalada por todos los sectores. ¿Cómo facilitó entonces la colaboración? ¿Cómo se facilitó la colaboración de todo el gobierno? Creo que hubo dos elementos de la estrategia BIM, dos ejes de trabajo claros. Uno, las entidades recibieron cursos, talleres, para fortalecer su conocimiento y capacidades en temas BIM, y segundo, se estructuró el desarrollo de la estrategia con actores de todas estas entidades. El equipo técnico de todas las entidades estuvo involucrado, y sobre todo haciendo inicialmente una concientización de los beneficios de esta estrategia a nivel de productividad, a nivel de efectividad, de tiempos, de costos, y eso fue clave para que todos participaran muy activamente en la formulación de esta estrategia. El Departamento Nacional de Planeación, que es una entidad que está llamada a articular y coordinar acciones en el gobierno, tuvo un rol fundamental, y era el llamado a liderar y articular y a tener un liderazgo particular en la elaboración y posterior adopción de la estrategia BIM en el país, la vinculación de territorios, empresas de desarrollo urbano, las 14 entidades integralmente responsables de la gestión de infraestructura a nivel nacional para todos los modos de transporte y categorías de construcción: aeropuertos, carreteras, red férrea, red fluvial, construcción de vivienda. Todos participaron pues muy activamente estructurando esta primera versión de la estrategia BIM, que luego fue socializada con otros ministerios y otras entidades, como el Ministerio de Ambiente, Defensa, Educación, Cultura, Energía, el Ministerio TIC. Entonces realmente estamos extendiendo transversalmente el uso de esta herramienta, que va a ser clave para competitividad y productividad dentro de la transformación digital de Colombia. Con el sector privado y la industria hubo un trabajo realmente muy especial. En particular, la Cámara Colombiana de la Construcción, Camacol, la Cámara Colombiana de la Infraestructura, la CCI, tuvieron un rol importante con todos sus afiliados para desarrollar esta estrategia y esta hoja de ruta para la implementación de BIM, que tiene un periodo de 5 o 6 años para su implementación completa en toda la política nacional. Muy importante tener esta visión de aumento de productividad, crecimiento y sostenibilidad. Eso ha sido como el eje rector. Luego hemos consolidado una visión de reactivación basada precisamente en sostenibilidad, digitalización, donde el trabajo del grupo de BIM y la consolidación de la estrategia BIM, pues van a ser elementos fundamentales. No solo fue importante la industria, los gremios, que además gastan mucho recurso, son intensivos en capital, ¿cierto? Entonces, cualquier ahorro es muy importante, cualquier eficiencia va a tener un impacto importante, sino que también se trabajó con la academia, y esto fue muy importante en particular dentro de la iniciativa BIM Academic Forum. Entonces, toda la estrategia del trabajo que hemos hecho ha articulado diferentes esfuerzos desde el orden nacional, desde el sector privado, desde la academia, para poder generar esta hoja de ruta de metodología BIM y adopción de metodología BIM, capacitando entidades del orden nacional, pero también al sector privado. El sector privado tiene que generar unas capacidades, y en particular con las pequeñas, medianas empresas, pero también con las grandes. Hay que generar estas capacidades y este entendimiento dentro de esta hoja de ruta. Entonces, desde su estructuración, la visión de la estrategia BIM es una estrategia de vinculación de todos los actores del territorio nacional. Es una hoja de ruta viva que hay que continuar desarrollando, continuar implementando, que no está escrita en piedra, tiene una visión de largo plazo. Empezó en 2020, termina en 2026 con la implementación integral de BIM a nivel nacional, y tiene 4 pilares fundamentales. 1, comunicación, difusión. Hay que entender la importancia de BIM, sus impactos en productividad, sus impactos en crecimiento, en generación de empleo, en eficiencias, en reactivación, y en la consolidación de sectores con eficiencia. 2, liderazgo público. El sector público manda señales muy claras y en términos de inversión es clave para generar dinámicas de adopción de nuevas tecnologías. Tercero, el desarrollo de capacidades, todo el eje de generar capacidades en sector público, en entes estructuradores, en entidades territoriales, en sector privado, es fundamental. Y finalmente, el marco colaborativo, que es esta acción de articular al sector privado, a la academia, al sector público, para generar conocimiento, para compartir conocimiento, para generar capacidades, para nacionalización de normas internacionales y la creación de guías, plantillas, material, para poder implementar efectivamente la estrategia BIM. Entonces, un gran desarrollo con mucha historia detrás, enmarcado dentro de una política general de transformación digital y con participación de todos los actores involucrados. Nos complace mucho participar en la red global, que va a ser un espacio fundamental también para compartir experiencias, para reconocer triunfos, pero también fracasos, experiencias y lecciones aprendidas, y poder todos continuar con esta comunidad de interés, avanzando en la implementación de BIM, con una visión de sostenibilidad, de reactivación, y de digitalización y productividad a largo plazo de las industrias de todos nuestros países. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Danielle. Now I will hand it off to Sebastian.
Hola, ¿cómo están todos? Muchas gracias a los organizadores por invitarnos a poder conversar sobre este tema clave, que es de qué manera el gobierno junto con la industria pueden trabajar en conjunto para generar beneficios, en este caso para las personas y los lugares que habitamos. Como comentaron anteriormente, soy Sebastián Manríquez, soy subdirector de Plan BIM de Chile, en este caso represento a Chile. Así que para poder iniciar, primero comentarles uno de los puntos iniciales, ¿no es cierto?, de que cómo se desarrolló en este caso nuestra estrategia desde Plan BIM hacia parte de las instituciones públicas de Chile, hacia el trabajo con la industria y con cada uno de los actores que son relevantes dentro de la industria. La estrategia de implementación BIM en Chile se basa, ¿no es cierto?, en utilizar el poder de compra que tiene en el Estado para lograr esta modernización dentro de la industria de la construcción en su totalidad, pasando por el sector público, el sector privado y la academia, y teniendo como foco principal las personas, por supuesto. el objetivo principal de la implementación de BIM dentro del Estado es lograr el incremento de la productividad, el aumento de la productividad y la sustentabilidad de la industria de la construcción en su totalidad, en este caso abarcando arquitectura, ingeniería y construcción. Para esto se han definido una serie de objetivos específicos, principalmente en incrementar la productividad y las competencias del sector de la construcción, poder incrementar la trazabilidad y la transparencia de la información de los proyectos. Esto es clave justamente por los temas de los proyectos públicos. Poder, en este caso, mejorar la calidad y la eficiencia de los proyectos a través de todo el ciclo de vida, y por supuesto mejorar la predictibilidad y el control de la construcción, tanto en sus tiempos de entrega como en sus costos. También uno de los objetivos que tenemos como Plan BIM dentro del Estado en Chile es poder fomentar el uso de estándares comunes para fomentar una industria más colaborativa y, por supuesto, poder asegurar, en este caso, el cumplimiento de los permisos de edificación, de todas las regulaciones que se tienen, y por supuesto disminuir los tiempos de aprobación de estos permisos de edificación. Eso ayuda principalmente a este aumento de la productividad. Como Plan BIM tenemos 5 líneas de acción. Estas líneas de acción van desde la institucionalidad y estrategia, la estandarización, el capital humano, las tecnologías habilitantes y, por supuesto, una línea muy importante que es la comunicación y la difusión. Entonces, dentro de esto, estas 5 líneas de acción son las que permiten hoy día a Plan BIM dentro de las instituciones públicas de Chile el poder fomentar esta implementación, que es una transformación digital dentro de la industria, y principalmente poder romper las barreras y las brechas que existen tanto en capital humano como en procesos, en estandarización, pero principalmente en la resistencia al cambio que existe dentro del sector de la construcción. ¿Cómo se facilitó la colaboración, en este caso, a través o dentro de todo el gobierno? Hay que entender de que hay distintos sectores que se han visto involucrados, principalmente el Estado y el sector privado, nosotros son los actores principales, quienes en conjunto el año 2016 definen crear como una visión de hacia una política pública, poder crear a Plan BIM, esta iniciativa, ¿no es cierto?, que apunta a la implementación de BIM dentro del Estado de Chile. Y para eso, el Ministerio de Economía, el Ministerio de Hacienda, el Ministerio de Obras Públicas, el Ministerio de Vivienda, Corfo, la Cámara Chilena de la Construcción y el Instituto de la Construcción se unen, que son parte de la industria de Chile, para poder unificarse a través de un convenio y decir que necesitan planificar y comprender cómo van a hacer esta implementación de BIM, y para eso se crea Plan BIM. Y luego durante los años, desde el 2018-2019, se involucraron en un total de 18 instituciones que van desde la Corporación Administrativa del Poder Judicial, Carabineros de Chile, la Policía de Investigaciones, el Ministerio del Interior, hasta las empresas mineras del Estado, que es Codelco, que se unen dentro de este convenio que apunta principalmente a implementar BIM dentro del Estado de una manera estandarizada y ordenada. Dentro de las fechas y las metas que se definen dentro de Chile, el primer requerimiento de BIM por parte del Estado en el año 2012. Este fue un requerimiento espontáneo por parte de los equipos, por lo tanto no estaba estandarizado, los equipos, las personas entendían que esto generaba valor, pero no había una definición clara de cuáles eran los objetivos que se debían cumplir. Y es por eso que el 2015, a través de un anuncio presidencial, se fomenta y se crea Plan BIM, que sus inicios son el año 2016. Ahí se crea Plan BIM y se definen 2 metas principales. La primera al 2020, que es requerir BIM dentro de los proyectos públicos de manera estandarizada. Esa meta ya se cumplió el año pasado, justamente, donde se inicia la solicitud de información a través de los EIR, ¿no es cierto?, los Exchange Information Requirements, dentro de las instituciones públicas, dentro de los proyectos públicos de manera estandarizada, basada en estándar BIM para proyectos públicos. Y al 2025 está la integración de BIM en la plataforma del Ministerio de Vivienda, que se llama DOM en línea, que permite de manera online poder hacer el requerimiento de permisos de edificación en los proyectos privados. Y para eso nosotros hemos hecho una serie de acciones dentro de estos años, que es desarrollar una matriz de roles, desarrollar el primer requerimiento de BIM a través de un EIR en los proyectos públicos el 2018, y el desarrollo del estándar BIM para proyectos públicos el 2019. ¿Cómo ha colaborado el gobierno con la industria? Bueno, esto es muy importante. El objetivo de BIM, de la implementación de BIM dentro del Estado, como les dije, es aumentar la productividad y la sustentabilidad de la construcción dentro de la industria. Y para eso, nosotros trabajamos como Plan BIM y como parte de las instituciones a cargo de la implementación de BIM, trabajamos con los tres sectores, con el Estado, con la academia y con el sector privado. Con el Estado es principalmente en hacer la transferencia metodológica para que los equipos profesionales estén capacitados para poder cumplir y poder desarrollar las actividades y las acciones que requieren dentro de la implementación de BIM, ya sea entender cuáles son los beneficios de eso y también poder utilizar las herramientas tecnológicas que le permiten llevar a cabo estas tareas. También trabajamos con el sector privado, principalmente haciendo difusión y soporte hacia las compañías para poder capacitarlas en que ellos puedan responder a este requerimiento estandarizados desde el Estado, y con la academia también principalmente haciendo difusión y soporte para estas instituciones académicas, ¿para qué? Para que puedan capacitar a los nuevos profesionales que vienen a trabajar a la industria de construcción y también a los profesionales que ya trabajan dentro de la industria. ¿Cómo en este caso se entrega esta estrategia dentro o al sector? Bueno, nosotros uno de los puntos principales que trabajamos con las instituciones públicas es lograr hacer el desarrollo de los Exchange Information Requirements, de los requerimientos de información, en este caso la solicitud de información BIM dentro de cada proyecto, y para eso hemos trabajado desde el año 2016 con el Ministerio de Obras Públicas, el Ministerio de Vivienda, la Corporación Administrativa del Poder Judicial, la Fuerza Aérea de Chile y la Subsecretaría de Desarrollo Regional. ¿Para qué? Para desarrollar justamente estos documentos, en este caso una serie de documentos para distintas tipologías que permiten tener estas solicitudes de información disponibles para que la industria los pueda utilizar y así el Estado pueda requerir de mejor manera y las instituciones, en este caso las empresas privadas, puedan responder de manera coherente y de manera estandarizada a los requerimientos del Estado. Otro punto es hemos realizado la adopción de distintas normas internacionales ISO desde el 2000, ahora del 2021, desde ya varios años. Por ejemplo, hasta el 2020 habíamos adoptado 7 normas ISO, principalmente la ISO 19650, parte 1, 2 y 5, la ISO 12006, que es muy importante también para la estandarización dentro de los temas en Chile, y este año 2021 ya hemos adoptado 6 normas más como norma chilena, esto la parte 3 de la 19650 y otras normas asociadas a BIM, pero otro tema muy principal, muy importante, es que además estamos trabajando en la participación y en el estudio y en el desarrollo de algunas normas a través de los comités espejo, que se creó el año 2017 y 2018 dentro de Chile, la participación de ciertas normas ISO ligadas a BIM. Y eso ha sido muy importante para que la industria comience a entender cómo esta estrategia de implementación de BIM los aborda también a ellos y ellos tienen algo que decir dentro de esta estrategia. Otro tema importante es que hemos capacitado a ciertas compañías dentro de los proyectos pilotos que se han hecho de los proyectos con BIM, a más de 30 compañías en distintos elementos, como incorporación de información dentro de los modelos BIM, listas de objetos o entidades mínimas para poder ser cuantificadas, o algunas guías de ciertos parámetros específicos, ¿no es cierto?, dentro del material de los pilotos. También tenemos el e-learning de BIM, donde pudimos capacitar, en este caso, a más de 10.000 personas dentro de un año que estuvo disponible este e-learning. Fue 100% gratuito, donde se inscribieron más de 16.000 personas de 32 países, y donde las personas que hicieron este curso partieron con un 25% de conceptos que ellos tenían conocimiento, y logramos llegarlos a un 90%. ¿Cuáles son los siguientes pasos que tenemos? Bueno, principalmente una plataforma de automatización de proyectos que se llama PARPRO, que permite a través de información estructurada, a través de IFC, hacer la revisión automatizada de ciertas reglas. 12 reglas de control de calidad de los modelos, 58 reglas de requerimientos específicos de los proyectos y 12 reglas específicas de la Ordenanza General de Urbanismo y Construcción de Chile. Esta plataforma permite que los appointed parties, ¿no es cierto?, puedan entregar modelos a través de IFC. ¿Para qué? Para que en este caso el ministerio, el appointing party, pueda recibir esa información, colocarlo dentro de esta plataforma, y que los revisores puedan acceder a esa información de distintas maneras, sin necesidad de tener conocimientos de BIM. Además, estamos desarrollando un observatorio de proyectos públicos donde hemos analizado 1.870 proyectos entre el 2013 y el 2020. Estos proyectos analizados son del Ministerio de Obras Públicas, Ministerio de Salud y la Corporación Administrativa del Poder Judicial. Y se desglosan un 70% de proyectos de edificación, 28 de infraestructura y 1,5 de proyectos mixtos. Y los resultados preliminares que tenemos hoy día es que un 20% de la inversión que se ha realizado ha sido requerida con BIM. Y si lo vemos ya en una dirección específica, que es la Dirección de Arquitectura del Ministerio de Obras Públicas, podemos ver que el crecimiento que tiene, que el año pasado, el año 2020, más del 50% de la inversión de los proyectos públicos de la etapa de diseño fueron requeridos con BIM. Ahora, para finalizar, comentarles que otro de los puntos esenciales que hemos visto de estos pasos ha sido poder lograr la continuidad de Plan BIM durante un año más. En septiembre de este año logramos la continuidad hasta diciembre de 2021, lo cual nos tiene muy contentos. Bueno, finalmente agradecer este espacio y quedamos atentos a la etapa de preguntas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you to all of our panelists. As a reminder, today's event is being held in English, Spanish, French, and Japanese. You should see at the bottom of your screen the option to select your language preference, which you should select now. I will now invite all panelists to turn cameras on and pass moderation to Valentina for a question and answer session. We also invite you in the audience to let us know about government and industry partnership in your country by participating in our Slido poll. Valentina, over to you.
Muchas gracias, Alana. I'm going to speak in Spanish because they told me it's better if we feel comfortable. So please turn your channel to English. Y en este momento voy a invitar a Sebastián, a Jonathan y Fergus. Please come and join us para dar inicio a esta conversación, partiendo claramente de lo que ustedes nos han contado y de cómo hemos visto esta transformación del ambiente de la construcción. Entonces, ahorita me acompaña Sebastián, veo a Jonathan y a Fergus. Bueno, voy a empezar con Fergus porque con Fergus comenzamos este panel y partiendo un poco de las conversaciones que se tuvieron antes, como la que construyeron Roger y Matthew y Jaroslav. Entonces, ahí en el chat incluso empezó a surgir un cuestionamiento. Fergus, tú nos contaste, yo no sé si Fergus, ¿me escucha Fergus? Are you there? Bueno, mientras Fergus se nos conecta, entonces empiezo con Jonathan. Hola Jonathan, ¿cómo estás? Jonathan, también surgió cuando hablaron Claudia del banco, del BID y Milena, surgió un tema respecto a la pandemia y respecto a la reactivación económica. Hablamos ahorita de tecnologías, pero ahorita yo te quería aprovechar para preguntar entonces, ¿qué rol tiene esta metodología BIM en la reactivación económica, en este caso de Colombia concretamente? Y cómo se articula esto con la industria, que es uno de los actores más importantes dentro de esta reactivación.
Sí, muchas gracias Valentina y muchas gracias a la Red Global por esta invitación. En el caso de Colombia, BIM en reactivación económica tiene todo que ver. Y aquí les quiero contar esos grandes proyectos de infraestructura que en el caso del país fueron fundamental para que hoy Colombia esté creciendo al 12,3%. Es increíble, esto solo nos superan 3 economías en el mundo y parte de eso fue por las decisiones que tomamos en la mitad de la pandemia. Parte de esas decisiones fue 2 grandes programas de infraestructura. El primer programa de infraestructura tiene que ver con un ambicioso programa en obra pública de más de 4.300 millones de dólares, 4.3 billions, y una generación de 490.000 empleos en la construcción de esta infraestructura. Y ahí esa política de obra pública se dividió como en 3 grandes programas. Una que la llamamos Conectar Territorios y Legalidad, que era una política en el caso del país, que eran esos grandes corredores de infraestructura primaria que históricamente no habían tenido inversión, pero que en el marco de pensar en nuestro plan Marshall colombiano, pues la reactivación económica en el caso de obra pública era muy importante. Y en ese programa incluimos más de 21 corredores en todo el país por más de 1.235 millones de dólares y generar 130.000 empleos. Ese fue un primer programa. El segundo que lo hicimos en paralelo se llamó Conectar Territorios. Conectar territorios y concluir, que era concluir esas grandes obras que les faltaban algunos recursos para inaugurarse antes de agosto del próximo año, que termina este gobierno en el país, una inversión de más de 2.300 millones de dólares y 300.000 empleos generados. Es decir, ahí ya vamos del orden de 430.000 empleos. Y en el caso de Compromiso por Colombia, ahí tuvimos otro gran programa de infraestructura que de otra manera agrupa esos 4.300 billions y generación del orden de 500.000 empleos. ¿Eso por qué es importante? Porque desde ese momento empezamos a pilotear varios de los proyectos en BIM, ¿sí? En el caso colombiano, el Ministerio de Transporte es el cabeza de sector, pero tiene unas entidades adscritas. El Instituto Nacional de Vías, que se encarga de obra pública, que les mencioné previamente. La Agencia Nacional de Infraestructura, que se encarga de las concesiones de PPP. Y la Aeronáutica Civil, que se encarga de la obra pública en aeropuertos. La ANI hay que decir que se encarga de todos los modos de transporte en asociaciones público-privadas. Y ahí esas entidades han empezado ya a formular proyectos en BIM, varios. En el caso del país y ya en el marco urbano, la primera línea del Metro Bogotá, una línea que tiene un valor del orden de 6.500 millones de dólares, pues ya se formuló en BIM. Hay proyectos ferroviarios como Dorada-Chiriguaná por 430 millones de dólares también en BIM. Y hay otros 6 proyectos aeroportuarios que viene haciendo la ANI y la Aeronáutica Civil por más de 420 millones de dólares, que también está usando BIM. Entonces, ¿qué es BIM para nosotros en la reactivación económica? Uno, generar transparencia para poder lograr esos 500.000 empleos e invertir muy bien esos 4.300 millones de dólares. Pero no nos quedamos ahí. Ese era como el primer rol de la reactivación de BIM y de la infraestructura en Colombia. Hay otro de mediano y largo plazo, que son esas concesiones que hemos llamado las concesiones del Bicentenario, o la quinta generación de concesiones en Colombia, que tiene un rol de intermodalidad completo. El lunes, con el presidente de la República y los ministros, nos aprobaron un documento en el que veníamos trabajando desde mi dirección hace más de un año, donde tiene unos criterios de sostenibilidad ambiental, de confianza en las instituciones, de trabajar con la comunidad, pero además un elemento muy importante, de trabajo colaborativo. Esos principios del COMPES de quinta generación de concesiones incluyen BIM en los nuevos proyectos del país. ¿Qué tenemos en ese COMPES de 5G? Además de las obras de infraestructura, obra pública que les mencioné, tenemos más de 2 olas de proyectos con unas inversiones de 12.600 millones de dólares que deberán revisar este enfoque de trabajo colaborativo, de pensar en BIM con esa nueva forma de ver y prever potenciales problemas en la construcción, que nos permita hacer seguimiento y corregir esas falencias que encontramos en el programa de cuarta generación de concesiones, que también tenía del orden de 10.000 millones de dólares de inversión y que es uno de los programas más ambiciosos en la región, en América Latina y el Caribe, y que ya lo estamos terminando, que antes de agosto del próximo año entregaremos 16 de esas 29 concesiones. Es decir, eso es BIM para nosotros. BIM es hoy ya con proyectos de obra pública para reactivación económica, unos componentes importantes que los encuentran madurando y piloteando las principales entidades del sector transporte. Y además, lo que viene de mediano y largo plazo, pues también está pensándose de esa manera. También viendo cómo a través de esta metodología podemos tener un uso eficiente de los recursos, y esto sin duda pues se convierte también en un elemento de eficiencia en gasto en Colombia, ¿no? Así que, Valentina, eso significa BIM en la reactivación económica en el sector transporte en Colombia.
Mil gracias, Jonathan. Ahí me parece bien interesante resaltar que efectivamente todos estos planes de transformación de la infraestructura, por lo menos en el contexto colombiano, están acompañados de una transformación tecnológica bien importante. Y ahí me da la pauta también para preguntarte, Fergus, ustedes son los que llevan un camino más largo, internacionalmente reconocido en transformación tecnológica del sector de la construcción. En ese sentido, y surgieron preguntas también en el chat al respecto, además de esta transformación tecnológica, ¿qué ha pasado en cuanto a la transformación cultural y social que tiene que venir acompañada de esta transformación tecnológica? Claro, hablaban, por ejemplo, de que dependemos solo un 10% de la transformación tecnológica de herramientas, pero que dependemos fuertemente de cómo lo adoptamos como sociedad y cómo se vuelve parte de cómo nosotros desarrollamos nuestros proyectos. Entonces, Fergus, cuéntanos cómo ha pasado esto en el Reino Unido.
Well, I think if anyone finds the recipe for success, please share it with us, because I certainly wouldn't say that we've solved the problem in every area. But I think the way in which we see BIM is that BIM is not fundamentally a technology. BIM is really a business change process. It enables organizations to collaborate with other organizations more effectively to deliver better outcomes for everybody. But it only works as a technology if you have the right framework for that collaboration. And part of that, I think it's the legal framework, it's the nature of the contract and the terms of the contract that apply to people and what they have to do. And that can relate to everything from payment practices through to dispute resolution, through to requirements around information sharing, so the standard to which you will work to in relation to BIM, but also whether you create something like a common data environment which everybody in the project team has access to. But it's also about the way in which the project is managed and the structures and the processes that you put in place and the delivery model for the project. All of these things exercise a really powerful influence on how effectively that project is governed and how well BIM is used. And I think the lesson that we've learned in the UK is that you can't underestimate the importance of those factors. So probably over the last year or 2 years, we've invested as much time in looking at those areas around the the procurement process, how you contract and how you include the right provisions within contracts, as we have in supporting the development of BIM and undertaking things like training in the technology, because we recognise the two have to come together to really make the best use of the potential that BIM has to make a better built environment.
Gracias, Fergus. Y de hecho, es algo que está muy relacionado con también lo que nos mostró Sebastián, y es esta hoja de ruta a través de diferentes ejes que se fortalecen por formación, que se fortalecen, claro, por estudio de políticas, estándares y demás, que van armando esta gran estrategia en la que efectivamente todos esperamos lograr esta receta perfecta que nos permita generar un cambio y construir este ambiente de la construcción a través de la tecnología que nos va a optimizar muchos pasos. Antes de que llegue Alana, sí me gustaría preguntarte, Sebastián, ustedes también, por lo menos en Latinoamérica, son un gran referente como Chile, como lo que se ha hecho. En esta construcción de la estrategia nosotros hemos seguido detrás también apoyando estas buenas prácticas, pero somos algunos los países que hemos construido esta estrategia de transformación digital. ¿Cuál sería tu mensaje para estos países que no la han construido y cuáles serían los pasos a seguir que ellos, para que den ese primer paso?
Gracias, Valentina, por la pregunta. Bueno, y gracias a todos por la invitación. Primero que todo, voy a intentar hablar lento para que los traductores puedan hacer la traducción, ya que los dejé un poco bloqueados en mi presentación. Y solamente hacer un ajuste y una salvedad en mi presentación. Tuve un error. La extensión de Plan BIM es hasta el 2022, no hasta el 2021. Como bien comentaba Fergus, no hay una receta, ¿no es cierto? No existe una receta mágica, y si la existiera, no estaríamos todos aquí y no existiría la red global, ¿no es cierto? Que es muy importante. Y creo que Adam lo comentó al inicio de este seminario, es que esto depende de las personas. Son las personas acá lo importante, y como comentaba Fergus, no hay, la tecnología no es un fin en sí mismo, no podemos plantear la implementación de BIM desde el lado solamente tecnológico. Y creo que uno de los puntos más relevantes que ha permitido el desarrollo de una implementación de BIM por el lado de Chile, y lo hemos visto también, y esto fue gran parte de la experiencia que tuvimos con el Reino Unido y otros países más, es el contar con un equipo de personas dedicado a la implementación de BIM desde el Estado. El trabajo de la implementación es algo que no es un tema puntual. Esto depende y va durando varios años y distintas etapas en la implementación, y esto necesita contar con un equipo interdisciplinario de personas, de profesionales que generen este apoyo hacia las instituciones públicas, porque sabemos que las instituciones públicas, su negocio no es hacer la implementación de BIM. Su negocio está enfocado en realizar las acciones que tienen dadas por el gobierno, en este caso, ya sea el Ministerio de Educación, el Ministerio de Salud o el Ministerio de Vivienda. Y eso también va generando ciertos conflictos con respecto a la dedicación que tienen las personas en estos procesos de implementación. Muchas veces los procesos, las personas cuando generan resistencia al cambio, se intentan aislar a estos equipos, ¿no es cierto?, dejándolos fuera de la transformación digital cuando tenemos que incluirlos, y además los equipos que están a cargo de la implementación de BIM muchas veces están cumpliendo otras tareas dentro de la institución pública en la cual se desenvuelven. Y eso por supuesto genera conflicto. Nosotros creemos que gran parte del éxito corresponde más allá de, por supuesto, el financiamiento, del soporte y el apoyo de las altas jefaturas del ministerio, de la institución pública, es contar con equipos que sean interdisciplinarios y que tengan una dedicación completa a esta implementación, que como les digo, no es algo puntual, no tiene un tiempo, un plazo tan acotado como todos quisiéramos, que dure un año o un año y medio, sino que es un proceso largo de cambio, porque es un cambio, como muy bien lo explicaban al inicio en las otras presentaciones, es un cambio social.
Vale, muchísimas gracias, Sebastián. Y bueno, me gustaría tener más tiempo para hablar con ustedes, pero ya apareció Alana. Entonces, muchas gracias y espero que podamos continuar esta conversación.
Muchas gracias a ustedes.
Thank you all. Thank you, panelists, for your thoughts on cross-government cooperation and public-private partnerships to harness the power of digital in national and global construction sectors. Also, I have to say a special thank you to our translators who have certainly demonstrated their expertise today. You may all now turn your cameras off, which I see you have. It's clear that government and industry collaboration is a key ingredient for successful transformation of the built environment. And with that, I will close our knowledge exchange panels. Thank you again to all of our speakers and moderators for sharing their perspectives and experience with the Global BIM Network community. Your views form an important part of the network's collective knowledge, and we will be sharing your presentations and related materials on the Global BIM Network website in the coming weeks. I will now invite Adam Matthews back to offer his thoughts as we close the network's first General Assembly.
Thanks, Alana. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, Adam.
Hi. Well, there was a lot covered there. Tremendous amount of information been shared by our speakers. Of course, this, as we know, is a long-term effort. I would like to just pick up what Sebastian was saying, that there's no panacea. I'm going to take the idea also of a recipe. It's no one single recipe, although what I do believe we're starting to see are common ingredients that we can all share between ourselves. Yaroslav said something really interesting early on in our discussion, which was about confidence. I think the confidence is a really big part of this. I think the public sector need confidence. They need confidence that this is helpful, that it's going to address some of those policy goals. We heard Fergus speak a moment ago about something very similar to what Milena was talking about, of course, which is about the sustainable built environment. Claudia mentioned that as well, that there are these large objectives. Of course, there is cost efficiency as well as the sustainable built environment objectives that these governments are trying to drive towards. And we need to share best practice in how to get there. The chat window I saw, there was a huge amount of discussion in the chat. The public sector doesn't have all of that knowledge. So I think the key lesson from all that for me, or takeaway, is that we want to have access to that information. We want to share that information, and that's really the simple idea behind the network as a whole, but also the call for knowledge that we've posted, and perhaps if we could post that again into the chat. We want to see those materials, those guidances, documents and tools, so that we can advance this agenda together. So that would be my first sort of thought, is picking up from Yaroslav's point initially about giving confidence, and I think the network helps to do that, and these discussions help to do that as well. I think there's also confidence to the private sector that's helpful. It's confidence to invest. This is clearly a large undertaking. It's a social and technological change. To pick up the last conversation, there's a tremendous amount of cultural aspects that need to change, but first of all, it does involve some of those skills, training, expertise development, and I think providing confidence to the private sector that that's going to be welcomed by the public sector, I think is a big signal that the global network can provide. This isn't going backwards, I would say, is the other takeaway from this conversation. It's clearly moving forwards. Digital information management, BIM, I've seen various different versions of it. I think we understand what it is when we see it, and I think we're seeing that that is not reducing or diminishing, and it is only going to increase. We saw the tremendous growth in this topic from just a few years, really. So I think that's also helpful, and it's why we put together the roadmap. It's why we set out an idea for, well, this is happening. How do we do this in a consistent way, in a way that's helpful to others and helpful to those objectives that Claudia and Fergus and others were referencing that we're trying to achieve. So I think this all is reaffirming in several ways, but there are some questions. So I'm going to just tackle some of the questions which came out for me of the discussion. One of them was around the private sector involvement. There are 18 million people approximately employed in Europe, and I'm going to estimate there's got to be over 100 million people globally, way in excess of 100 million people, I'm sure, that are employed by the construction sector globally. So when you're thinking about a sector that's worth 13% of global GDP, that is also pivotal to economic and social development of all countries, really. I think then you've got to think, how do we talk? How do we have a conversation between the public sector and the private sector and the other organizations that were represented here today? So the academic side, the professional institutions and trade bodies and others. So how do we all have a conversation? We can't just do this once a year or twice a year, of course. It's got to be more meaningful around certain topics. So we'd welcome thoughts and ideas on that from those of you that have a private sector representation or academic representation. We'd really welcome your contribution to that. And again, get in touch with those IDs that we've shared, the international email, or contact us through the Global BIM Network website. Which leads on to another thought, which is sign up, of course. That's partly what this event is. It's about growing our community. So sign up if you're a public sector representative. We'd really like to hear from you as well, if you would like to get involved in the network itself and to participate in some of our conversations. I hope what we've shared here is that we're an inclusive group, that we've got an incredibly diverse and rich, broad set of languages, cultures, different levels of maturity that we've got going on in our community here. So I would really encourage you to get in touch with us if you're from, and also equally, if you're private sector. Yes, for the moment you won't be part of those steering committee meetings, of course, but I'm sure we can work together on how to get involved. So that's really my summation of this, and I really do look forward to the next opportunity to get together early in the new year. Right, Alana?
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Adam, for your final thoughts. And thank you to all of our speakers. And a special thank you to everyone tuning in from across the world. We're very happy to have you today. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Global BIM Network event in March. Goodbye for now.